Well, voters are demanding action regarding the ongoing homelessness crisis in San Diego. Governor Newsom recently announced that he wants to put 3 ballot initiatives relating to his homelessness plan on the March 2024 statewide election.
Joining us now to share more on the opposition against these 3 initiatives is Reform California's chairman, Carl DeMaio. Carl, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
For our Sunday chat.
Yes.
So first of all, explain what are these initiatives, the first 2. What are they and why are you opposed to them?
Yeah, so Newsom has something called Housing First, and we've talked about this failed approach to homelessness on the show previous weeks. It basically means that we're not going to enforce and we're not going to require any treatment of the underlying reason why someone's homeless. And 80% of chronically homeless people are there because of mental health and or substance abuse problems. That's the data. It's overwhelmingly clear. Instead of investing in shelter beds to stabilize them and then require treatment, Newsom's concept is hand them a taxpayer-funded key to $1 million unit called permanent supportive housing. And permanent means forever, that we're on the hook forever to support their housing costs. The developers get to build these boondoggles, and they are extraordinarily expensive per unit. As I mentioned, $1 million. The container project down in South Bay was $600,000 per unit for little shipping containers. Okay, so these are scams. There's a lot of corruption and graft, but the politicians get a campaign contribution back from the developers. So follow the money, you know why they're funding failure. So it's resulted in an epic rise of homelessness, and we're not saving people on the streets. We could actually save these people's lives. So Newsom is doubling and tripling down on failure. So his first 2 initiatives deal with how does he get more money to the developers. The first initiative, and this is just appalling, and the fact that the media refuses to cover this scam is just so infuriating. He wants to raid mental health and substance abuse treatment programs and give the money to the developers. We saw California voters about 2 cycles ago pass a special millionaires tax, and they said we have a mental health crisis, we need more psychiatrists and psychologists, we need more treatment programs, and I agree, we need to invest money there. No one should ever be refused a treatment program if they have this problem and want to change their life. But that tax was increased, and Newsom is sitting there saying, well, there's a lot of extra money. We can't possibly spend it all. Well, I keep hearing from people that we don't have enough psychologists, psychiatrists, and treatment programs. So clearly there's still a demand out there. He wants to raid that money and put it into where else? The Housing First projects. The second thing, and he says the reason why I'm doing this is that we need to give keys to the mentally ill. They're all mentally ill, you rube. I mean, we've got to get the treatment issues.
Most people would agree with the fact that treatment needs to come first, and that you need more centers and more, like you say, more psychiatrists, more people to help this.
We have the ability to fund shelter beds
or drug rehab
cots, not $1 million units with the kitchenette and whatnot. The second thing he's going to do is, now that he gets that money from that tax fund, that tax increase, he's diverting the money, he wants to immediately bond it. So what he's doing is he's taking, let's use simple math, $1 million of revenue, and he wants to do $1 billion worth of bonds and support that on an ongoing basis. In other words, he wants to take out the credit card and say, I'm using the rated money for the minimum due payment, but that gives me the ability to borrow billions of dollars. So it's even worse than that. California has a bond limit right now, thankfully. He wants to max out the credit card, take all the bond capacity left in the state and go where? Give it to the developers for these Housing First projects. That's the second initiative. So he's pairing a raid on treatment programs to generate money to support a bunch of bonds far into the future to give developers money immediately, billions of dollars immediately, and of course he and his cronies will get a little kickback of that. The third initiative is also really dangerous. The third initiative strips local communities, voters, of the right to vote against a government-subsidized project. So in the 1950s, voters said, hey, we don't want these Section 8 government housing projects in my neighborhood unless we know that there are protections, oversight, police, etc., enforcement. And so voters wisely did that, which means that any time a Section 8 housing project goes into a community, the voters technically have a right to demand that it gets put on the ballot and they can vote it down. Newsom wants to eliminate that constitutional right because he wants to put these projects in every community. And he knows that with these projects come crime, grime, and bad behavior. And so can you imagine a Section 8 housing project in every neighborhood? And that's exactly what he has said. He has said that all neighborhoods must do their part. Well, actually, there's some rich enclaves in the Bay Area who he has been able to carve out of various pieces of legislation on state affordable housing goals. Imagine what happens when you're, well-connected and you're friends with Gavin Newsom or Nancy Pelosi. But this proposal called SCA2, and it'll be given a different number when it gets on the ballot, would strip voters of the right to say, we don't think you've done enough to make this project safe. We don't think this is the appropriate place for it. There's other places for it. And it would strip you of your right to vote that down. They want to empower these rich developers with all the money and with carte blanche authority. And this is coming on top of the other stories you've covered on KUSI this week, SB 9 and 10, which also contain language allowing builders, called the builder's remedy, to get around even city council rejection of a project. So what they're trying to do is basically say, you all have to live with these homeless projects, and we're not going to require that the homeless actually change their behavior. No, no, no. We're just going to put them up permanently in your neighborhood and put taxpayers on the hook for paying for all the costs.
Well, and it should come as no surprise. I'm sure the verbiage of this will make it look as though you are helping solve the problem.
Vote for the ultimate solution in homelessness. These are the same con artists who've stolen our money for 15 years, embraced housing first, given it to the developers, and yet what do we have? We have a 36% increase in homelessness, while the rest of the country has a double-digit reduction in homelessness. Clearly, these people should not be entrusted any further to comment on homelessness. No. And the fact that when Todd Gloria comes out there and says, oh, we're going to start enforcing, why doesn't the media ask the question, well, Mr. Mayor, for 15 years you've said we don't have the ability to enforce. So are you lying now or were you lying then? And do you admit that for 15 years you've been part of the problem pushing back? I don't believe that he's going to enforce. I believe that this is all a campaign re-election stunt, just showing that he's trying to go through the motions. The reality is the people who've ruined the state with homelessness are still being given a pass by the media, with rare exception. And I believe that this election needs to be the revolt. That if voters vote down all three of these initiatives, and we do it because we say, you people have failed and we don't trust you anymore, that will absolutely be the calling card for a change in policy. So Reform California is trying to do our best on a statewide basis to organize that campaign. No one else seems to be interested in organizing the campaign because the developers want the money. So we have this website, cleanupourstreets.org. cleanupourstreets.org with all the information on these bad proposals. You can share it, you can contribute, but we believe that if we can get the word out there, enough people are fed up and frustrated with homelessness that they'll vote no. So cleanupourstreets.org is the site. We've got 6 or 7 months to prepare to get a grassroots campaign going, and we're committed to doing it. All
right, Carl DeMaio, Chairman of Reform California.
Thank you.
Always good to see you.
Yep.
Every weekend now.
Our Sunday chat.
Yes,
I drive in. I'm not just doing Zoom.
I know,
This is special.
It's pretty cool.
All right, thanks, Carl.
Thank you.